Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Well, very pleasant good Monday morning, everyone. Welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KTX KWBY. Terry Slavens with you. And really not a pleasant Monday morning. It's a little foggy and misty and cold and yucky, and we have Angela Robinson with us.
Yes, it is all those things, but my goodness, it's the week before Christmas, and I'm sure everybody's just loaded with joy, right?
Loaded with joy. No stress.
No stress whatsoever. And we have quite the topic for today. I don't want to waste a lot of time because I'm just so excited for today's show. You know, it is the season of giving, and every December we try to bring on a very special guest in the realm of philanthropic measures, and today is no exception to that. You know, it's interesting. I've been reading, I'm on my second time of reading this book this year called Enemies of the Heart by Andy Stanley, and I highly recommend it for anyone. I actually told my husband, I said, can I get this for every one of my family members? And he said they may take offense to that because it talks about greed, resentment, anger, and just these things that get in our hearts and manifest, and how to be able to overcome them in a spiritual sense. And it's just an incredible book. And I thought about when I read it, I bought it because my obvious thing I struggle with the most is I have quite the temper, and so that was what caught my attention. Well, what I learned in reading the book is that as Americans, especially, the greed that lives in all of us, just being an American, that you don't even know that you have. And it's interesting because there's a cure to that, and it's called philanthropy. Yes. And, so we have a very special guest on the show today. This is a woman that came from an industry in wealth management and Wall Street, and she spent 20 years there before, she had children. And I think, of course, when you have children, you start listening to God's calling more. Well, this is no exception. She ended up saying, what can I do to be great examples for my daughters, which we all do that once we become parents, right? How do we be a great example? And, it led her to what I see as, after hearing her and talking to her, a calling for her. She started out in a community foundation that wasn't just any community foundation. It was the 6th largest in the United States. And she worked there for 10 years before she decided to go and venture on her own to be a philanthropic leadership consultant to advisors across the nation, which, being a life planning firm, we talk about this all the time. So our listeners are used to this. They're used to hearing us talk about charitable giving. It's not a common thing for advisors to talk about that. That's, something that really isn't in their wheelhouse. They're not trained upon. And so she's, had this calling to be able to do this. And she's received a certificate from John C. Maxwell, which is one of my favorite authors. I actually use quotes from him all the time on the show. And then 2164, multi-generational philanthropic. And, she's just a font of information, and I am so happy to have her. She's also a certified financial planner, and it's truly an honor, especially because she's on the West Coast this morning, joining us at 8:30 Central Time, right? This is Arlene Cogen. Thank you so much for being on with us this morning.
Oh my God, it's a pleasure to be here. You give so much great information to everyone out there, and whenever I have the opportunity to share the joy of giving, it makes me happy. So it's really a pleasure to be here, particularly around the holiday season.
Absolutely. And, I'm just going to go ahead and hit everybody with a wham. You wrote a book which has a magnificent title, Give to Live, Make a Charitable Gift You Never Imagined. I love that. We talk about that all the time, is that people don't understand they can give charitably. and, really not be a hurt to their children and not be a hurt to their own future. And they don't understand how it benefits them. But once they learn, it's amazing how their hearts just are transformed, and seeing a family transform because of it. And so, congratulations on your book. And I know, those are gifts that come from God to be able to write those types of things. So kudos to you on that.
Well, thank you. I made it specifically for advisors to give to their clients, so their clients could understand that they could give whether they're a multimillionaire, of modest means, or of mass affluence. So everyone gets a takeaway and learns how to give at their own capacity.
Yes. And I understand we're going to make this big introduction, and then we're going to leave everybody with a cliffhanger. We've got five different items that she's going to teach us about today. Of course, the hard science behind giving, solving personal and financial issues, and creating a legacy, how to endow your gift, tax-efficient ways to endow your gift, and she's got a free values exercise that you're not going to want to miss hearing about at the end of the show. So thank you, Arlene, for being on the show. We're going to take a quick break, and you don't want to miss Mrs. Arlene Cogen, CFP out of Oregon, on the phone with us right here in Life Planning 101.
And welcome back into Life Planning 101 right here on KTXKDY. Angela has lots of great information. Let's get right to it.
Yes, we have a very special guest, Miss CFP Arlene Cogen, who wrote the book, Give to Live, Make a Charitable Gift You Never Imagined. And without further ado, I'm going to let her talk our ear off, even though she is on probably 1 cup of coffee in Oregon this morning. But you talked about, the importance, the fundamental, the foundation of why you're doing what you're doing, and the science behind this, and what's inspired you. And I think that's so important for people to understand, especially when they're talking about their family's legacy. So why don't you talk a little bit to that, Ms. Cogen, about what is the hard science behind giving?
The hard science behind giving is really fascinating, and I love to pull in a study that Michael Norton, who's a professor of business at Harvard, an associate professor, he did a study with Elizabeth Dunn, who's an associate professor up at the University of British Columbia. And they asked a whole bunch of participants, how they felt, and if they would participate in a study about happiness. And participants were given either an envelope with $5 or $20, and in the envelope it randomly stated, spend the money on yourself or spend it on other people. And at the end of the day, we want to check in with you. So what happened is people went to the Starbucks on campus because it was a very popular place, and these were college students. And at the end of the day, the people who spent money on themselves, whether it be $5 or $20, really had no effect on their life. They had nothing change. But the people who spent their money on others were happier and more fulfilled and more energized for the day. And what was fascinating about the study is that the Pew Research did this in over 136 countries, a similar question about spending money on others or charitable giving, with over 200,000 participants. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is that people who spend money on others are happier. So Michael Norton, who has a great TED Talk out there on how to buy happiness, basically sums it up in this beautiful way. If you think money can't buy you happiness, stop spending it on yourself and try spending it on other people instead. So with that little note, I always say, you can buy a stairway to heaven. Okay, it's Led Zeppelin, and my singing isn't good this early in the morning.
Terry's always trying to get me to sing on the show, so thank you for covering for me for the next 6 months. I appreciate that. So he'll get off my back. So. That's great.
But there were also other studies done with MRIs and happiness, And what happened is the prefrontal cortex of the brain is stimulated when people activate the giving center and talk about giving. And what's really neat about the prefrontal cortex is that's the same part of your brain that's stimulated with food and sex. Oh. So there's hard science up in that brain saying if you give money away, you're going to have a good brain experience.
Yeah, it's so true. When we help people with their budgeting, we're always telling them, focus spending your money on two things: other people and experiences, because everything else is just stuff. The new wears off and it's gone. When you spend your money on other people, obviously it's a gift that gives. It's an amazing gift that gives, and experiences are memories that you have forever, right? So that's so powerful. And you talk about, and obviously, yes, that's amazing hard science, and maybe it's just one leads to another, but solving personal and financial issues, and also helping to create a legacy. What is it that you have experienced that you've seen that or been able to kind of point to that?
Well, after spending 20 years in the trust and investment world, and then a decade with the Community Foundation, I really found that there was a disconnect of the understanding of how simple it is to make a charitable gift. And when organizations sometimes talk about, major donors or legacy donors, they automatically are eliminating people who think they can't make a charitable gift. And most people feel that in order to make a charitable gift, whether it be to solve a personal problem or a financial problem, they have to be multimillionaires. When in reality, you can do it at many levels because there are different tools that could help you solve problems. For example, if you need to take care of a loved one who is ill or incapacitated, there are charitable vehicles like charitable trusts that can provide that loved one with an income stream during their life, and then ultimately support the charity and cause near and dear to your heart. So you support that loved one, you take care of a personal issue. Because it's a charitable vehicle, you get an immediate tax deduction, and then ultimately you're creating that legacy you never imagined. And charitable trusts can be set up with, I've seen them at $50,000, $100,000. I've also seen them at, $1 million. So it's a very flexible tool for clients to help support family members. And it's a matter of having that discussion of what the biggest goal you want to accomplish is, and then working backwards to figure in philanthropy into that plan.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. We have what we call our 8 life planning issues, and one of those is charitable inclinations. And we go through those 8 life planning issues with people, and we tell them that we're going to do this even if we're going to go through these, even if you don't feel that these are incumbent on you at the moment, or it's not a matter of importance, because we want to be proactive about this. And it's interesting that you say that, because when people uncover their whole life's painting to us, every single detail, then we can start to weave something that really helps them, make that family's impact. And I think that's what's so powerful about what you just said, is that, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you think that there's only one way or the highway, or you think you have nothing to give, or you think you can do nothing because I have to take care of this, or because I have to do this, or because my health is failing, when the opposite may be entirely true. Or, so it's very, very important. I think, like you said, you get to the heart of the matter. What's really important to you about money? What's really important to you about your legacy? And that's so powerful. What a great story.
Yeah, it's exactly like you said. And I think when I work with advisors, most of them have not gotten to the place where you've gotten to, where you really want to incorporate their purpose and meaning in their planning. But when you do that, it's just so much more fulfilling for your client, fulfilling for you, and you really get to make a personal impact as well as an advisor.
Absolutely.
You get some of those endorphins released in your brain because you're facilitating it. You're transcending this client and giving them the opportunity to self-actualize and have a bigger purpose in life.
That's exactly right. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, "Am I really working right now? This is not a job, and this is incredible." And you're right. Just being able to see families do that is an amazing feeling. And I know you talk about endowing an annual gift, and I assume this is taking us back. And I want to back up and say something. You said something about no matter how small the gift, and do you know the poem about the little boy with the starfish on the beach?
Yeah.
Okay. I wish I'd had that title, but I know we don't have time to go over it on the show. But I would encourage everybody to go out and look for, it's a parable or a poem about a boy with the starfish on the beach. If you think you don't have enough to gift, think again, because every single starfish that gets put on the beach and that you don't throw back in, it mattered if you would have picked it up, right, and did it. So every dollar, I think, counts and at every level. And so that's extremely impactful. But Mrs. Cogen, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about how to endow an annual gift the way you've never imagined.
Final segment, Life Planning 101. Let's get right to it, Angela.
Yes, we have a very special guest, Miss Arlene Cogen, CFP, that is the author of the book, Give to Live, Make a Charitable Gift You Never Imagined, giving us some phenomenal information this week before Christmas. And what a better time as you're surrounded by your family than to be able to talk about your charitable legacy. And so, without further ado, we left the last segment hanging with how to endow an annual gift. So what do you even mean by that? I bet our listeners don't even know that.
Oh, that's a great question. So if you give $100 to an organization every year, do you have an organization that you give to every year, Angela?
Yes, our local Meals on Wheels here.
Meals on Wheels, a fabulous organization. So when you die, and we hope that's not for a super long time.
Yes, let's hope so.
But when you pass away, they stop receiving that $100 because you're not there to give it to them anymore. So when you endow a gift, you're basically giving an organization enough money that will produce a 5% payout equivalent to your annual gift. So what we do is you take your annual gift of $100 and you multiply it by 20. So a $100 gift times 20 is $2,000.
Okay.
And if you leave a bequest of $2,000 in your will to Meals on Wheels to endow it, when they invest it properly, that produces a $100 payout in perpetuity.
That's awesome.
So when we say endow a gift, we mean make sure that that organization receives that gift forever.
So we just need to cut this segment out of the show, give it to Meals on Wheels to use to take to all their donors. That's absolutely wonderful. That's great information, and how simple. I love how you've simplified that, because that's so powerful. People don't, they know what they want, but they don't know how to do it. So they just leave a blanket amount, and they don't really even know what that means. So that's powerful.
And when we take that $2,000, that's probably isn't going to make or break anyone's inheritance,
no.
but the value you get from the personal satisfaction of making that gift and creating that legacy is immense.
Yes, and even more to that, I know you're very familiar with donor advised funds and things like that. And something that we are always encouraging people to do is let your children and your grandchildren be a part of that. Don't just make that a gift, but being able to help them be managers of that gift so that does continue with your guidance, because you're the one that actually set up everything and how it should be payable. But, they're able to learn the value of that, and their frontal cortex be worked on, right? So what a great simplified version of that. I love that. And then, okay, so you're talking about a tax efficient way to endow your annual gift. All right. What's the insight here?
So let's take that a step forward. If you have to write a bequest in your will, one, it means you have to go see an attorney and pay an attorney to draft your documents, which costs money. And number two, we have retirement accounts. And if we, instead of making a bequest in our will, make a beneficiary designation out of a retirement account, we have, one, saved money on an attorney.
Yes.
And two, given our most tax-efficient asset as a gift. Because as you know, your retirement accounts, when are included, are taxable twice, depending on how large your wealth is. One is included in your overall net worth for estate tax purposes. I know some states out there still have a estate tax like Oregon. But two, you also avoid taxes because distributions from retirement accounts are taxed as individual income to the recipients. But when that retirement asset goes to charity, there's no tax to pay.
Yes, and
so it's a super tax efficient way.
It is. And you know what I love about that, too, is that you can change your mind without going to an attorney. IRAs have another benefit in that regard, that if you want to do something a little bit different charitably, you don't have to go redraft your whole will. And so that's the powerful thing there. So, one of the things we've had a guest on the show before, his name is Frank Mullins, and he talks about, these 5 things that you possess that you can pass on: your wisdom, your stories, your faith, your talents, and your money. And if you were to choose one of those 5 things that you wouldn't be able to pass on to your children, which would be your choice? Money, right? And so, I love what you talk about, because it's everything not to do with money, yet we focus on money. Why do we focus on it? Why do we always want to make sure our kids are taken care of, when really what's most important is that they have those 4 other aspects? And charitable inclinations and doing this as a family can do that. It can accomplish that. And that's so powerful. So we've got one last thing here, and I don't even know what this is, so I'm really excited to hear about it, Arlene. A free values exercise.
Yeah, so when I work with people around giving, I always like to go back to core values. A lot of people do it investing. Why shouldn't we do it with our charitable giving as well? What are the core values that you operate with in your life? And what I've done is put together a worksheet so people can start to identify the core values near and dear to your heart. And it's a huge list, and you get to narrow it down, because when you start to focus your giving and how you give through your core values, it just adds the next level of happiness.
It's from the heart.
So I offer that to all your listeners.
Awesome. And where can we find this?
You could just send me an email with values in the subject line to Arlene at arlenecogen.com, and I'd be delighted to forward it to you.
All right. So values in the subject line, Arlene at arlenecogen.com. So excited to be able to share that with our listeners. I fully expect you're going to get an email, at least from me. But Miss Arlene, we just so appreciate you being on the show, especially getting this close to the holiday season, and what a blessing you are to our listeners. And we wish you, and I know you've got 2 wonderful girls and your family, a very Merry Christmas, and may God bless you for your work, and just fill you in His favor.
And back at you. Have a great holiday season.
All right. And thanks to all of our listeners right here on Life Planning 101. My name is Angela Robinson. God bless you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and KWBY, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.